Hello, my little Liebfrau Milches, and welcome to another Friday edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, the big and furry bovine. You can call me Mr. Moohead. And joining me, beside me, Derek Frisbee. You can call him DF, not MF, of DF Sports. And longtime participant, Bronk from merry old England. And we're here today to talk about what we probably wanted to talk about earlier, but with the holiday, wasn't going to happen.
There was a holiday? I didn't know.
Yeah, well, I wasn't sure whether it was fireworks or gunfire, to be very honest with you. And
that holiday. Yeah.
I wish that I was being funny, but I'm not being funny. It's screwed up. And hello to I. Nice to see you on board. The first thing, obviously, we haven't had a chance to discuss the fact that the Panthers finally consummated the deal for Baker Mayfield, which is, at long last, love has arrived.
Consummated is a great word, by the way.
I'm alive. What?
Consummated is a great word, by the way, because the Panthers now have Baker's jizz all over their faces. So there you go.
Well, I wanted to kind of look at this for what it is. There are fans, and fans are all entitled to their opinion, and that's what makes these types of podcasts flourish. And my opinion isn't going to be the same as Derek's, isn't going to be the same as Bronk's on every single thing we talk about. But there is a line that gets crossed as far as, when we take sides, we vilify one side or we vilify the other. On the one extreme, it's the Deshaun Watson, he is a rapist and should never play football again and should be locked up. And then on the other side is that Baker Mayfield sucked and that he was garbage. And, neither things are either true, accurate, or prognosticated by any evidence. So I'll start this way. Baker Mayfield going to the Carolina Panthers is good news for Baker. All right, because he's out of the quagmire. And I want to point out, because it's funny how I listen to people and the sides they're taking, and I do, Browns games, as far as pregame or halftime and postgame shows. And I do weekly shows twice a week, and been doing it for 19 years. And I was here for all the Baker games, all the Baker things that went down, good and bad, all the bad coaching that Baker had to endure. And God only knows, between Huey Jackson, the revolutionary leader, and Freddie Kitchens, a guy who just didn't know his way how to coach out of a paper bag, and then Kevin Stefanski. It's been a tour of duty for Baker. And I'm not going to sit and tell you that it's been easy. But if you're making $19, $18, $17, $16 million a year, who in the fuck said it's supposed to be easy? I mean, let's be honest about this. Professional athletes, everything that comes to them, and the progressive perks, the commercials, the endorsements that come with it, means that when things go good, they go good. When they go bad, they go bad. And so it goes with Baker Mayfield. Am I happy he's leaving? And the answer is, I don't remember seeing Carolina really competing in the NFL very recently. And the fact that the organization has not come right out and said Baker is the starter for week one, which in my estimation is crazy because he hasn't been as bad as Sam Darnold, who has been bad in two places. Baker has been good, mediocre, and poor in one place and under different coaching strategies, different whole different playbooks. One thing that he's proven to me is that from a consistency perspective, it's not really there. And I don't care what the scheme is. I'm just talking about him overthrowing balls, him throwing things into coverage, him not getting the ball to certain guys downfield. There is a lot that would indicate that Baker Mayfield can be an effective quarterback given a set of circumstances. And he had many effective games. And it was better than what we're used to in Cleveland, which I'm afraid we're going to get this year with Jacoby Brissett. There's a difference between having a mediocre professional quarterback and just having Brandon Weeden. There's a big difference. And I see that T-Tosh is around here. There's T-Tosh right there. And he's, I love LA. He's cruising town. Yeah. And
the last time Carolina was relevant was the Super Bowl L, or Super Bowl 50, however you want to call it. But it was a big L for Carolina when Cam Newton fumbled the ball. That was back when Coldplay was doing the halftime. That's how long ago it was.
Well, and it was back when Cam Newton really was looked upon as a superstar for getting them there. And
not even a superstar, the superstar at that time.
Yeah. And
Superman.
Just kind of a physical asset. But since then, it hasn't been very good. They have never been able to achieve any consistent offense. They've gone through defensive coaches there. And what now? Matt Rule over there?
Yeah, Matt Rule.
Yep. And, we'll see if he can pick up the offense. But, what's coming out, if you didn't read the article in The Athletic, I'm not going to go into great depth over that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of reason for me to believe, and I've said this before, so this is not me repeating something or just bringing something into the conversation. I have said in the past that I'm quite certain if Baker Mayfield and I were around each other for very long, we would not like each other. All right. And I've made this comment on several occasions. I do not let the politics of football players or whatever get into, because I might say the same thing about Colin Kaepernick. I don't know, but because I was covering Baker week after week after week, he is, I guess what you would say, how would I put it? Very hard-headed. And he loves being the man. He loves when he makes a big play to take those big high stepping strides down the field and say, look at what I just did. The thing that bothered me about the way this whole thing played out, not one guy stood up for him on this football team, Derek. Not one guy came out and said, I got that guy's back. Yeah. Why?
It's interesting. I mean, you talk about a guy coming out of college who, is listed as the rah-rah guy, get you hyped up. The teammates love him. Early on in his Browns career, you could say the same thing. I think he actually did a pretty good job. If you remember, especially that first game, and this is kind of when you look back at the Baker Mayfield era for the Cleveland Browns, that first snap in 2018 when why can't I remember? Tyrod Taylor. When Tyrod Taylor went down with the concussion, I mean, the energy lit up. Guys rallied around him. That was incredible to see for a Browns team that was essentially dead for years.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, now here we are a couple years later, and it's like, you got to struggle to find a single player in that locker room who liked Baker Mayfield.
Yeah,
it's really interesting.
That first game was the Monday night game against the Jets. And I happened to have been in New York City at the time watching that from a hotel room. It was hilarious. But yeah, and then doing it in front of people, a New York team, made him massive. But the thing about Baker was he would be kind of jokey, self-deprecating. Like when he was mic'd up, he would say he'd give the handoff to Nick Chubb, and Nick Chubb would run 80 yards down the field. Then he'd come to the sideline and go, "Did you see that great handoff I did on that play?"
Mm-hmm.
And you wondered whether how jokey he was or whether he was actually sort of slightly serious when he said that,
Well, what I can tell you is this: a lot of guys on the defensive side of the ball did not have confidence that if they, and the thing about defense is so much of it is will and desire.
Absolutely.
When you take a look at our guys when they were stoked and playing hard, and then you can tell when they just kind of sit back on their haunches and don't do what they're supposed to do. Attitude is to stay positive and to stay hardworking throughout a 17-game schedule is a difficult thing to do. But if there's a guy out there who just isn't following the script, and you've got offensive players, you got two great running backs, and I know that Hunt was hurt. Chubb is nothing short of magnificent. And contrary to what some people seem to think, wait a minute, I got something in my eye. Nick Chubb is a better running back than McCaffrey is. For one thing, he's durable and he can play. And second of all, he is just better. He's physically superior. We have these great running backs, and I'm not going to get into OBJ because this was not my favorite guy from the time he came over from the Giants. But Baker never seemed to be able to bring the thing together. And what we weren't sure about was, is it the scheme or is it Baker? And we're still not exactly sure. We're going to find out. We're not going to find out with Brissett because Brissett hasn't found a system that he likes yet. He's going to be who he's going to be no matter what. He's going to be a dink and dunker who's going to try to avoid mistakes and is going to throw into the flats and come up short on vital third downs. And we're going to have to punch a lot, and we're going to have to pray that we can punch the ball down in the field with our running game to get into the end zone, because he's not a red zone guy. He does not throw very many touchdown passes. This we know.
No, they're gonna ask Jacoby Brissett to basically do, what the Browns have tried last season. You're gonna run the ball, you're gonna play defense, and you're gonna ask Jacoby to not make mistakes. You're not gonna throw too far downfield. We've talked about it. It's going to be the 10 to 15 yard passes, over the middle stuff. They're not going to ask Jacoby to take over. They're going to leave it in the hands of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt.
Now, one of the things that I read on clevelandbrowns.com is, the notion that, hey, nobody expects David Bell to be a burner downfield because we already got that covered with Anthony Schwartz and Donovan Peoples-Jones. And I'm just sitting there going, that doesn't sound right to me. The concern that I have regarding all of this stuff is we're not going to know about Stefanski's scheme with Brissett playing the vast majority or all of the games this coming season. What we're going to see is more of what we saw from a hesitant Baker Mayfield, who for a while was afraid to let the ball go. And, the article in The Athletic, if you didn't read it, said that there were real severe trust issues between Baker Mayfield and Kevin Stefanski. And Stefanski wouldn't say shit if he had a mouthful, but Baker, on the other hand, probably let his feelings be known because he's much more of an externalizer. Stefanski's like, I'm going to have to get better at this. And that's the extent of what you get out of him. But Baker just can't keep his mouth shut. And you start saying that within earshot of people who maybe agree with the system that's in place. And you start thinking, this guy's thinking too much me and not enough we. Whatever the situation was, nobody had his back. Nobody is grieving over the loss of Baker Mayfield on that roster. You're not seeing the crazy social media posts by team members saying, you know, thank God he's gone, or, oh, we really are really going to end up missing him. Nothing. Just a big, vast, dark pit. And that's what there's been.
Can I ask a weird question?
Huh?
Can I ask a weird question?
Sure.
Is the team going to play harder for Brissett than they did for Baker?
Well, I'll tell you what's going to have to play hard is our new center, Nick Harris, and our running game is going to have to. We need to have Kareem Hunt take X number of snaps because he's got such thick legs, driving legs, that he, Chubb is the guy who at any given moment finds a crease, and he has such incredible vision that he can break a long one.
Yeah.
Kareem Hunt is the kind of guy who, if he gets through the first wave, he is going to hit you and move you backwards.
Yep.
There ain't much wiggle jiggle in him. But if you want a first down and it's 3rd and short, that's the guy I want with the ball in his hands. He's like having a fullback who could also break things for, 15-yard gains. But he's not Nick Chubb, who's going to get, 72-yard touchdown runs. He's going to run inside, but his vision is different. He's just so damn strong.
That's the value, though, of having a Kareem Hunt. When you have the two guys with different skill sets like that, you talk about Chubb, like you said, he's a visionary guy, but he can hit that crease and go. With Kareem Hunt, you're talking about a guy, like you said, he's basically a fullback, but he can catch too. It's not that Chubb can't catch. We just don't really use him in that role. But when you can have two guys who are great running backs and they both are great at different things, that is so incredibly valuable. That is so crazy.
People forget that, the undefeated Miami Dolphins. I mean, you couldn't have different running backs than Mercury Morris, and Larry Zonka, and Jim Kick.
Yeah.
Mercury was the speed, Zonka was just blast forward, and Kick was receive, okay?
Were they the Killer Bees defense too? Like, wasn't that their nickname? Where everybody started first name with B?
Yeah, the whole Shula era, they really had quite the offensive package that allowed Bob Greasy not to have to throw very much. I mean, if you look at his statistics, it wasn't unusual to see him play a game where he was 13 of 20.
Correct.
Because, the running game became that important. The way that we win with Brissett, if we win with Brissett, is that way. You're going to have to get convert short yardage over and over again, run clock.
I saw something that might have been just completely random. I don't know whether there's any truth to it. So I'm going to ask you guys, there was an article that said Jimmy G might be a possibility for the Browns? I mean, is that just crazy? Or
I don't know who put that out, but yeah.
I don't know either. But certainly the whole thing, it's always bad news when you're on the open market and you're coming off surgery on your throwing arm, and the guy who has been vilified in Cleveland, now has landed a job and you're still out there. Yep. It's not a great place to be.
He's screwed. He's not going to Seattle. They're not going to trade him within the division.
I don't think so, no.
So where's he going?
Yeah, it's a heck of a question. One of the things that I want to point out to people who are watching the program is that it doesn't matter how this ends up. If week 1, which the NFL is laughing its ass off because, that's going to become the most publicized game now, right? Baker getting his revenge against the Browns. But let me explain that if Baker wins in week 1 against the Browns, they'll shit all over Cleveland because they always do anyway.
Yep.
But if Baker loses to Cleveland in the opener, they're going to shit all over Baker.
Yeah.
Because that's what they do.
Especially if it's Jacoby, which
it's a win-win.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is I already know what the take's going to be. It's just going to be shitting on one or the other. And it's going to
Correct.
be the story with Baker is, well, they took this guy number one overall and, he's trying to do it. This is no good way to get started. If you're notoriously up for the big game and you woke up feeling dangerous and all that good stuff and he loses, then it's like, maybe he's not that good. Maybe it was a lousy number one pick. And they can continue to shit on the Browns for that. And the Browns won't get credit for beating Baker Mayfield because the Panthers aren't expected to really do much of anything.
Yeah, their roster will not be seen as better than the Browns roster.
That's right. So, it's easy to sit back and say, I hate this guy. I hate this guy. The truth always falls somewhere in between. I wish Baker the best. I don't think that going to the New York Jets, going to the Panthers, or going to the Browns is the best destination historically for quarterbacks. That is what I can tell you. It's going to be a hard, long journey for Baker to be able to get the grasp of yet another new offense and get the confidence of an organization. And believe me, they don't want to play Sam Darnold any more than they have to.
No.
I mean, Sam Darnold is somebody that is already just, it's like Josh Rosen. It's like, forget about it. That was then, this is now. The fans that bother me the most, I believe they're two-faced people. There are people who go out and will say things like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get myself a Baker jersey now, and I'm going to cheer for the Panthers against the Browns because I hate the Browns now.
Wow.
And it's like, oh, wait a minute here. Since when did Baker become the Browns? Those are two completely different things. Baker Mayfield was a top selection in the draft by the Browns. But there's all these other guys on the roster. How is it possible you can turn around and say, well, I'm just not a Browns fan anymore? And it's like, well, look, you've sat through God knows what. You've sat through the worst quarterbacks, the worst head coaches, Shermer and his notes blowing across the field into Marvin Lewis's hands, and you've sat and witnessed, every bad head coach 131-1 with Hugh Jackson, and you lived through that, and you were still a Browns fan. Jimmy Haslam buying the team and getting busted immediately for fraud in his business, and you're willing to accept that. What is it that's so different this time around? And I say you're two-faced because you're not consistent. If you don't want to be a Browns fan, I say you never really were then. I mean, this is about a team. I grew up in Northeast Ohio. This is my team. And sometimes it's really hard to say that because it's so disappointing.
Well, you know what's crazy though, talking about Baker Mayfield. I just in the little interactions I've had with like Oklahoma fans and people who came from Oklahoma to become Browns fans, it's crazy the effect that Baker has on people. And I think it's just his personality because, I mean, you talk to these Oklahoma fans, they don't care about Kyler Murray. They don't care about Jalen Hurts. They didn't care about Sam Bradford. But Baker Mayfield is, die on the cross for him. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I guess it's a credit to Baker for the impact he has, but my goodness. It's very strange.
He's a charismatic guy. You either like what he does. He is going to be the way he is. If he's not going to like something, he's going to tell you he doesn't like it. The problem is this is a game that hurts people. It's a game that's impossible to win without each other. It's absolutely impossible to get to the penultimate or the ultimate game without having camaraderie. And there was just this coldness that existed between Baker Mayfield and many of his teammates that just did not come to his rescue. And it got to the point where each week, and you can say, well, he shouldn't have been playing because he was hurt. The Browns should have known that. So should he have. It was like the offensive players stopped running their routes, stopped caring because there was a cripple at the quarterback position. He should not have been playing.
Well,
And
look at how he got crippled, was literally stopping running around. And then he tried to tackle the defender. I mean, it's poetic almost.
Well, and I think that's classic Baker Mayfield. It's reactive. I think that he can whip people up into a frenzy. He's like Hulk Hogan was in the WWE in his day. He could just whip people up. God couldn't wrestle for shit in my estimation, but his charisma brought people into the arena and he could get people excited.
It's all about the presentation. When you go to watch Hulk Hogan, you get the, and all that, and you get the shirt rip. When you go watch Baker Mayfield, you get the fired up guy. That's what it is.
Yeah, and the guy who is hot on the streak is throwing, tons of completions and can't miss. And, it was just like watching The Rock. You knew what you were going to get. Mm-hmm. And charisma is a big thing. And in college sports, where you have really a wide open offense, like Lincoln Riley gave him, and athletes, wideouts who were exceptional, like Marquise Brown and guys who were really, really good and were capable of playing really, really good at the next level.
CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, you had a really potent passing game. And so you put all those things together, and yes, he's going to be revered there. Build statue for him. I mean, he's that kind of guy. And but it didn't translate for very long in Cleveland because we've been losing for so long. And this city and the image of this city eventually sinks into athletes, and it's more about staying healthy, getting paid than it is about winning. It's very hard to sacrifice for Cleveland when the fans are willing to sacrifice, but the ownership too often is asleep at the switch. The other thing is all this stuff about, analytics. If you wanted to find the quarterback who absolutely defies analytics, it would be Baker Mayfield. He doesn't want the game broken down that far. You drop back 5 steps. You look downfield. We're counting in our head. You have to get rid of the ball in under 2.7 seconds, Baker. You've got to be able to field 2.7 seconds. And if there's nobody downfield in that split second, you've got to turn and throw to this secondary guy in a pattern who's a tight end or a running back. And you start turning this into an equation, a formula. He's a non-formulaic guy. He's a guy who wants to make a play, but the problem is he's not fast enough to survive when he steps out of the pocket. He'll get run down, and got a huge arm. He's got a strong arm, but he didn't have the best wide receivers in the world. And if you're looking to make the big bang play downfield, how many of them are there? And the answer is the bang plays were being made in the running game more than the passing game.
Yep. And if you look at all the top NFL quarterbacks, the one thing I know is especially Patrick Mahomes, and I know, everybody just throws his name out there as the best quarterback. But the one thing, if you watch Mahomes play, yes, he hits a lot of the big time throws downfield, but he looks for the check down. Baker always would overlook. I mean, how many times last year did we see a Demetric Felton wide open in front of him? The most notable one is the Minnesota, where he was wide open in front of him and Baker took off and ran. If you're going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, you have to know your spots. Go through your reads. If they're not there, hit the check down or run. Baker doesn't have the talent enough to run as effective as some of the other quarterbacks, so he has to look at the check down, and he refuses to. So if he's going to succeed in the NFL now, on a new team, He's got to change that. He has got to change that part of his game, or he's going to be in the same spot. It's
Well, he's going to get
unfortunate.
hurt again
Well,
because
that too,
he
yeah.
could easily be, you would think that for a quarterback who is shorter than what is preferred, and for a guy who, I don't think we ran enough plays out on the fringe, but I think teams took that away from him. All the naked boots and all the
Oh, they
bootleg
knew that
plays.
was coming. That was the TJ Watt or JJ Watt. They all knew when those plays were coming. The thing that we're forgetting here is that Baker Mayfield was drafted by John Dorsey, who was the most unanalytic pro
That's
general
right.
manager in the entire world. And then suddenly our ownership team lurches in the opposite direction because of some feud they had. They got rid of Dorsey, and now we're stuck with this pure football player, Mayfield, who is better than his stats are, but he doesn't fit into an analytics dream of a coach and a play system.
Wrong guy.
Wrong guy, wrong scheme.
It's like miscasting an actor or an actress in a movie. Sometimes you just see somebody like you're watching Godfather 3 and Sofia Coppola, who never acted in a movie, is just sputtering her lines out, and you're saying, what's this rank amateur doing on the screen with Al Pacino? And this is what it looked like. It looked like the whole thing just didn't ever mesh.
Oh, it didn't at all.
And
I mean, it's like having Oprah Winfrey in Baywatch. It's not going to work.
Well, and believe me, Stefanski is kind of gonna. He's not so worried about Jacoby Brissett, because Jacoby Brissett already has a mindset to try to protect the ball and not throw interceptions. And it seems that Kevin Stefanski is much more willing to punt the ball 8, 9, 10 times a game and let his defense keep you around and keep pounding and keep pounding and keep pounding in time of possession. But I'll tell you, if Deshaun Watson gets to play, Stefanski is going to have to broaden his scope.
Yeah,
and we'll see if he is got a Superman syndrome as well.
You're starting to see that in camp, though, which is the good news for, everybody who thought, it was a limited offense. The Browns are starting to go into pistol now. They're starting to change things up. So that's the good news. We'll see how much of it translates to on the field. To answer Ron, Higgins signed with Carolina before Baker. Yeah.
What a coinky dink, though.
Well, yeah. I think maybe Higgins had, the assumption that Baker was going to end up there, would be my guess.
And the other thing is that Higgins flat out quit at the end of the year. He was walking to his slot position. He was jumping off sides. He was running out patterns. He's a notorious guy who never mentally gave his all to the Cleveland Browns. And I don't think he's capable of doing that anywhere. And going to the Panthers is just, again, it's a way to make a few $1 million.
If the Panthers are smart, though, they'll throw Higgins out there as much as possible early on with Baker, just because of that familiarity.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess what the fans that piss me off are just the people who just look at this like, I hate the team now. Deshaun Watson, who's never taken a snap with the Cleveland Browns and may not this coming year. Now I hate the Browns because Deshaun Watson's the quarterback. What kind of stupidity is that? What kind of ignorance is that? I mean, come now. If this is your football team, you can't tell me that it's like, ooh, I'm really jazzed about Johnny Manziel. I mean, when they got Manziel, I'm like holding my head. I needed an ice pack. It was like, why? Why knee jerk? What do you need this guy for?
Dude, it's funny because you're not going to believe me, but I was watching Manziel highlights last night, and it's like, you could tell he was never going to work in the NFL, especially at that time. At anything, he would have been a decent backup. It's more failure on our part. I don't understand it. But hey, the homeless guy said draft him, so let's take him. Why not?
Yeah, and again, y'all sat through that. All right. So if you're willing to sit through every bad decision that the organization has made, and if you look at Deshaun Watson as just one more, and it may well be a real bomb, it could go that way. But you're just not being truthful. You're not being truthful. And if you're going to say that's the straw that broke the camel's back, and I'm going to say, man, there have been so many more straws that were more crazy than getting Deshaun Watson. I mean, really. And you never had a problem when, I mean, Kellen Winslow, you love to watch him play. He wiped himself out in a motorcycle, but then you find out he had absolute, not only reckless abandon on a cycle, but that he was an assault meister.
Oh God, he's not a good human being.
And but no problem with that. Yeah, I can just go back and look at guys. He's like, yeah, but he's our guy. And it's like all of a sudden, it's like this happens, and it's like, no way. And what am I going to tell my children? Well, fuck your children. I mean, what did that have to do with anything? What am I going to tell my kids if I cheer for Deshaun Watson? I mean, I don't know. What are you going to sit down with your daughters and explain why they shouldn't go on and offer, hand jobs to people on Instagram? Is that what you talk to your daughters about? I mean, you can't be two-faced.
Jim Brown, same thing.
Oh my God, he threw a woman off a balcony, for goodness sakes. For goodness sakes. I mean, this game is made up of players, some of whom are universally loved, like Joe Thomas, because they gave every last ounce of themselves for the organization. There were guys who were classy, like Paul Warfield, who was just a great artistic receiver, who was great in Cleveland. He was great in Miami. He was great in the end when they brought him back, and then he was front office in Cleveland. Just a beloved guy.
Ozzie Newsome, another guy.
Look at recent Demaryius Thomas, guy who unfortunately passes away, was nothing but a professional, great guy, and he was found to have CTE. It's like it's the nature of the game.
It's again, and then I can tell you about the players who were not so great, who played for the Browns, and you were still hanging in there. Kareem Hunt kicked a woman on the ground. Y'all didn't have no problem with that. You're two-faced people. You're a bunch of liars. I call every one of you out. Because if the basis by which, if this is a morality play, why are you even watching the games?
Yeah, exactly. Just watch.
I mean, what's going on in the field is nothing moral about it. From painkillers, addiction, and assault, and encephalopathy, not a morality play. And get all high and mighty about it, It's because you had a pre-existing agenda. And whether that pre-existing agenda has something to do with racism, or if it has something to do with, gender support systems, or whatever your agenda was, you'll fit it in. But you shouldn't be a football fan if you don't like men who assault women. You shouldn't be watching the game, because I can find damn near one on every team. So,
which doesn't make it right, by the way. For everybody who's saying, well, yeah, it still doesn't make it right. That's true, but at the same time, we can't pretend it's a one-person problem. It's an NFL problem. In my opinion, I think it's a culture problem, to where you have these athletes, and I said it before, they come in now. It's not like the older days to where you more so you get to college and build your name. Now that's starting in middle school and then
Yeah.
high school. And now you get into college and you have guys like Quinn Ewers, who was here in Columbus, made $2 million because of his name, bounce ship. And I mean, you tell me that kid doesn't think he's the best thing to ever walk the earth. You are trained now very, very young to think that you are the top of the top. You're untouchable. It's the culture. When you're told
Yeah.
that from a young age and you keep building up, it's not going to change. That's why it's
Well,
almost
yeah.
unique for Nick Chubbs of the world, you know?
If you're 13 and 14 and told that you got that sort of entitlement going on, and it'll only get worse because you'll build up this entourage and this bubble around you, and then you'll have millions to play with. It's a recipe for disaster for people of even moderate character, let alone low character.
Yeah.
So,
And the last thing I'll say, and it'll be the last thing I say about Baker Mayfield until we see him on the field in the regular season. If they win, they beat the Browns, I'm going to have nothing but nice things to say. I'm not going to be rubbing anyone's face in the dirt. I mean, my feeling about it is I'll feel good for Baker. You know, I'll say that's the kind of thing that Baker does, and that's what he longs for. But I would think that at some point Baker needs to grow up a little bit and realize this is a business, this is a career, this is something that isn't about a chip on your shoulder, and it's not me against the world and everything that you do. It's got to be something in which you get stronger because everybody else around you is stronger. It is not just me, it's we.
Yeah. And Baker has no choice but to grow up to an extent, because I don't know if you know this, but Ben McAdoo is now Baker Mayfield's new offensive coordinator, and they pulled quotes from the 2018 draft when Ben McAdoo said he had Baker ranked last out of all the quarterbacks in that draft class. He said he's a short quarterback who tries to play within the pocket with small hands. He hated Baker way back then. I don't know how he
Right.
feels now, but he didn't like him back then. And then you have Roby Anderson coming out and saying, "Oh, I'm going to retire if we trade for Baker Mayfield." He's probably lying. He's probably not telling the truth. But Baker already is going into a situation where he's going to have to win that locker room over. They're not welcoming him with open arms. So he's already in a tough spot. So he himself is going to have to fix some of the problems that he can with him personally, and maybe attitude wise, take a different approach to it, or he's going to be in another really bad situation here quick. It could get ugly.
Now, here's the other thing fans have sat through. Former Browns linebacker Clay Matthew Jr.'s Hall of Fame hopes aren't dead yet, but neither are Art Modell's. Now, I'm going to stop it right there because, what is the Hall of Fame in the seniors or the coach contributor categories? And Art Modell would fall under a coach contributor category. What he contributed was fucking the city of Cleveland over. He's a lying prick, and they should just keep putting dirt over him just in case he could ever get out. All right. If you lived through that and you were one of the bold and brave fans who kept the dream alive of football in Cleveland, I want to hear this shit about Deshaun Watson. I'm not a fan anymore. You know, this organization and the fan base has been through so much that it's just another thing. Just another thing. Somebody in the chat room was asking if I thought the Guardians were going to lose again. And I'd say, hey, halfway through the season, they're 40-40, they're 500. That's better than you thought they'd be. It's better than I thought they'd be. Yet fans are screaming, fire Francona.
what are they?
Do you know how fucking stupid you'd have to be? I mean, fucking stupid. I mean, like born stupid. The Guardians weren't going to be good. They can't hit for any power. Their pitching has been not what they'd hoped, but we knew it wouldn't be because you lost Cookie Carrasco, you lost Kluber. These guys went off because they got older, they got hurt, and you're trying to say, oh, we're going to find a diamond in the rough with a Plesac, or we're going to find a diamond in the rough, with Tristan McKenzie, or we're going to find it, you're throwing a lot of diamonds in the rough against, when you came out and you played Boston and New York, everybody saw, the Emperor wore no clothes. At that point, you knew what the Guardians were. They're a cheaply put together group of AAA players who are either chronic overeaters like Josh Naylor, who couldn't even make it in San Diego because he can't maintain his body weight. Guy like Stephen Kwan, who I really like Stephen Kwan. He plays an aggressive outfield. He goes after everything. He's a line drive hitter, and he runs well. So it's like, I'm glad we have him. He could actually be kind of like a little spark plug guy, like a Kenny Lofton, a poor man's Kenny Lofton. Couldn't steal home, but I'm saying, I'm stretching a little bit. But you look at what else, and you got Jose Ramirez, who's just really flat out good, but he's been on 16 home runs and 63 runs batted in for what seems like 3 months now. I mean, it's all since he hurt his thumb, it don't look the same. And Owen Miller starts out hitting 280, and now he's sub 240, and is turning into the Owen Miller we knew he was. It's who we are. So no, I didn't expect anything. I've had half a season of fun baseball from the Guardians, and it's taken me to the brink, 1 month away, of the preseason of the NFL. So I say, thank you, Terry Francona. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for making this team competitive for half a season. God bless you for all the medical problems you've had to endure. People to have the nerve to say, fire him. It's the same people who say, I'm not a fan anymore. The fact is, you don't deserve professional sports in Cleveland. The minority guy who took over has to wait 6 years before he can take on a majority stake of the Guardians. That's the fact, Jack. It was contractualized that way by the Dolans. The Dolans want somebody to put money into there so that they can take some of it and put it in their pockets, but they're not interested in creating a winning baseball team. And these guys were bound to wake up in the middle of the year in the dog days of summer and realize that they're nothing compared to the teams that are really stacked, like the Yankees and the Red Sox, and teams that are just better than they are in every aspect of the game. So I don't really feel badly. I feel like, hey, I got the season pass for $100 on MLB online, and I'm happy with what I've gotten. So the rest of you, shut the fuck up, because if you thought there was going to be anything more than that. Now, Browns fans, I'll tell you, you feel like you're this close. You feel like, oh, man, we've got the talent in certain positions. But I'll tell you, we're still not elite. We're not elite at the wide receiver position. We're not elite on a secondary pass rush basis. We're not elite in the secondary if we can't stay healthy. I mean, there are holes in the Cleveland Browns.
It's actually, so talking about the secondary, I don't know if you've seen, I can't remember if we talked about this already, but there was rumors that Joe Hayden wanted to come back. What did you think about that?
Well, I mean, for one thing, it seems like Joe Hayden's been playing football for 20 years. I don't know. I mean, it just seems like he's been around forever. But what I would tell you is they hire people sometimes not on the basis of what great things they're going to be able to achieve, but on the basis of what they bring to an organization. And tricks and methods to hide holds in the secondary, things that Joe Hayden knows inside out. It's like having an extra coach, but have him working with the players. I'd love to see him, because other people that we've brought in that alleged role, guys like John Johnson III and guys like that, they really haven't proven to be the kind of stalwart guys. I'll tell you who a guy was Hairston back. Unfortunately, it was his hand that the ball whizzed by on John Elway's drive pass that tied the game. But Carl Hairston was a guy who, Big Daddy. Everybody respected him. He'd been there. He'd done that. Great kind of locker room guy, but also worked with the players and still had some chops that he could do when played in limited situations. I'd have no problem with having Joe Hayden around, because he's a smart football player.
He's 33 years old.
Yeah. But he's smart. I mean, and we have young guys who aren't smart. And we need, technique is great, yes, but there's a way of playing. And Derek knows this. When you're playing in the secondary, you don't reach out. If you're going to grab somebody, there's a clever way of doing it so that the official doesn't see it.
Yeah, don't get caught.
And, but these are the kinds of things that a player like Joe Hayden could,
Well, and plus, you mentioned it. It's a very young room, and it's only gotten younger since you brought in Martin Emerson. So, if Ward or Newsome go down, which, it's been proven that Ward, has got a little bit of an injury problem. Greedy Williams, we know it doesn't matter how well or how terrible Greedy plays. He's at injury risk every snap.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't hurt to bring in a guy like a Joe Hayden, like you said, for that veteran leadership. And also, I feel like he could seal some of the cracks, that are left by some of these younger guys. Plus, it buys Emerson another year. If you don't have to sign Joe Hayden to a massive contract, it's going to be very, very cheap if you do, and it's going to be a 1 year. And the Browns have money to play with for this season. So,
and he really is another one of the fan favorites in Cleveland. There's no doubt.
Sorry, guys, I gotta go. All right.
Okay, Bron, thanks for popping in. I do appreciate it, man. Here's a slogan. This could be a slogan for pro and anti. When people say things like this, it's either "Go Baker" or "Go Baker." He went, okay? You should be happy. He went.
Keep pounding.
His career lies in front of him, and I wish him nothing but the best, really. I have nothing bad to say about Baker Mayfield. And at this point, as a Browns fan, I'm only looking forward, because looking backward only fills us with misery. It really does. And that's what the television networks exploit, is all of the past failings. And I want present success. That's,
Well, and you don't have to remember all the bad. That's kind of my takeaway is, yeah, it sucked how things ended with Baker, but there's a lot of good moments. There's a lot of good memories. So, you can be a fan of Baker and want the best for him, but also still be a Browns fan. I don't understand the narrative that you have to choose one or the other. At least me personally.
I don't know if anybody's watching the Cavaliers summer league game. Agbaji, has anybody seen? I know it was on 5 o'clock, and it was being shown not only on ESPN3 but on NBA TV. And I don't know if that's a live broadcast on NBA TV or just ESPN3. But before we get out of here, if anybody has seen what Agbaji looks like, I'd be curious. I've been watching film on him, and I would be interested to seeing how it translates, at least into a summer league game. I suppose I can wait until it comes around on the carousel on the channel on the NBA TV. But other than that, I've said pretty much what I want to say. I don't want to talk about Vince McMahon. I can tell you that. And I really don't care about that. And I could say congratulations. The Raiders have hired Sandra Douglas Morgan, the first Black woman, to serve as NFL organization's team president. But again, the NFL has such problems right now that once the Deshaun Watson thing is disposed of, and I believe he's going to be suspended for the season, they're going to have to go on to other problems that they are facing that are potential public relations disasters. So it's not like they can just bury Deshaun Watson and bury the rest of their problems. They got more to work on. So,
well, we should by next Friday, I think we're gonna have a suspension or whatever happens. The 11th, I believe, they're supposed to be bringing the findings or what the ruling forward to the NFL. So I was told, through people I know that he's expecting. So the 11th is when they're bringing it forward, and then by the end of the week, next week. So probably he said the earliest would be Wednesday, but probably Thursday, Friday, we'll know. So it's coming soon. We don't have to wait too much longer to know for sure, but it's gonna be what it's gonna be.
yeah, and we just go on because we're Browns fans and we're united in that respect. And believe me, everybody knows that my opinions are not shared politically by a lot of people, and which is all fine. And the way you look at some of my beliefs, I look at yours. But we are united as Browns fans and as Northeast Ohio people. My childhood goes back there, and I will always be a Cleveland Browns fan. And I don't care who drafts who, how good Joe Burrow is or isn't, or how, I just don't, where Baker Mayfield goes, I don't care. I am a Cleveland Browns fan. It's the reason why I keep doing this podcast. I mean, 19 freaking years. It's the love of it. It's nothing more. And I'm not going to change my mind just because Haslam and I mean, if I could get into a room with Haslam, I'd probably bitch slap him and say, "What in the hell are you doing?" But again, it's his money, it's his team. I choose whether I'm a fan or not. And so I want the guys to win. Why not? So, all righty. Derek, I appreciate you coming in and doing the show today. And how's your arm? Is it coming along a little better? Shoulder
It's I don't know. They said it's healing slower than it's supposed to, so I don't know. We'll see
Be
at
a
the end of
good
the month.
boy. Be a good boy.
It's annoying. That's for
Well,
sure.
and
It's weird when your shoulder's not attached to your arm. It's a little interesting.
and your age. I mean, have they done the surgery, the reattachment?
No, so they're not okay. So I don't know if I described this to you before, but basically, if you can see, it's supposed to look like this. Mine looks like this.
Yep.
So the problem is it's here, but if it gets worse, then it goes here, and then it needs surgery. So right now it's here, and hopefully with healing, it's going to come back down a little bit, and then it won't require it, and it'll just strengthen itself. So the injury, the separated shoulder, it's made up of like three, I don't know if it's ligaments or tendons, whatever, and it attaches. So I'll show you on this side. So basically, it attaches to here, right? Now there's one ligament here that keeps this in place, and then there's two over here. So there it goes like that, and then it kind of goes like that. So this one over here is completely gone. I mean, it's completely tore. These, they're saying they're small partial tears. So the problem is, the reason why I have to keep the sling on is because with this being gone, that puts more pressure on these two.
That's right.
So it basically, it's just keeping these two in place and strengthening them right now. And that's why it's the slow healing thing. It's like, it's it's gonna take a while, but it's just my job to not make it worse. So
That's what you have to do. You just got to be smart about how you don't use it.
yeah.
But thanks for coming in. I appreciate. We'll be seeing you again next week, I hope. Stay well, and everybody out there in Moo Moo Land, nice doing the program again. And I am in the process of getting pieces together, and I'm going to be reassembling this broadcast studio to make it actually a little bit more like Derek is doing there, with a nice boom mic. Things that I should have done a long time ago, but it's just too lazy. But now that my back is an issue and my neck is an issue, I got to have really good posture when I do a program, and having articulating arm boom mics and video monitor holders are just stands is a necessity. So there may be a couple of shows where I'm forced off into another room. I'm getting rid of the desk that I've been using. I've already ordered a new desk that is going to be a lot better for the purposes that I need it. And so if you see some of the shows, you go, why does it look different? It's because I can't bring these lights with me into the other rooms. This is my studio, but I may be having to go a little bit on the outside for the next, somewhere in the next couple of weeks, I would think. So everybody, thanks a lot for tuning in, and we'll be back again on Monday. And until then, hasta la vista, Pastor Heads. Good night.
Moo.